All right, welcome to Jardín Studios. Today we got a special guest panel today talking about Veterans Day and other. Let me kick it off here with my man next to me. This is Jason Moore Brown. He's the Vice President of Veterans Affairs for WeedMaps. We have Zach over here, who is the Managing Partner for Jardín and the Man. And then we have someone who probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but we got Randy the Natural Couture down here. Former 6-time UFC champion and the first double champ, as well as a former Army sergeant and an all-around good dude. So it's happy to have you here today, Randy, and all the guys to talk about Veterans Day and helping veterans, and also the cannabis community and how that integrates with plant medicine and some of those things. So thank you everybody for being here. Randy, thank you for being here.
Man, my pleasure.
As we go through, with Veterans Day coming up next week, it also happens to be Jardín's anniversary as well. They've been here for 7 years, servicing the community, and they do a lot of special things for veterans. They actually have the highest veteran discount of any dispensary in Nevada, and I'll let Zach kind of talk about more of the veteran programs with Jardín and other.
Yeah, so we're trying to do our part, and thank you, J-Rock, and thank you, Randy, thank you everyone for coming today, Jay. We see it's a very important at this point, at the time that we're in this world, right, where veterans aren't getting talked about enough. They're not getting taken care of on a lot of different levels. So we're just trying to do our part and offer as much as we can on a holistic side. Cannabis has a big stigma around it, as we all know. And one thing's for sure, it's medicine. And we see a lot of veterans coming in because we're on the retail footprint. We're not on the cultivation side of things. So we see all the veterans coming in. I think we've done a total of $500,000 of discounts since we started this year.
That's great.
Or last year.
Awesome.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't have the totals for this year yet, but at least about $500,000 so far. And listen, man, we got to take care of those that need to be taken care of. And once again, thank you for your duties that you guys have both put in, all three of you actually. So,
Appreciate it.
And it's something that we take pride in, and we want to do more. We're going to open up Jardín University, like we've talked about a bunch of times, to open it up to some veterans, so that we can give them a little bit more awareness on the products they're putting in their body, because there is such a big lack of education in this space.
Right.
So we want to do our part, along with some vendors that kind of share the same vision as us, and educate the consumers as much as possible.
That's amazing. Yeah, obviously these men and women really need it. And the educational part, as we started talking downstairs, is really important because, even myself, I had no clue what the difference was between sativa and indica, except for I think one makes you sleep and one keeps you up, and I can just give my personal experience. When I got home from the war, and and I was having tough times, like a lot of us do, and I turned to doctors. I turned to taking prescription drugs and different things that was prescribed to me to help with depression and anxiety and some of these things that I was dealing with. And I was also having suicidal ideation during that time, and it was just it was hard for me to ask for help. It was hard for me to talk to people because I've always, just kind of toughened up, and, I bury things, and I buried a lot of things, but as I started drinking so much and those sort of things, that it made me go deeper. And I was just trying to find a way to get through it, therapy, these sort of things. None of it was really effective for me. And, but I was just doing the work. I was just trying to do anything I could to figure it out. And, I went to the doctor, and I'm like, look, all this stuff that I'm taking is making me feel dead inside. I feel like I just don't like it. I don't want to be on this forever. I need to figure something else out. And my doctor at the time was like, look, I can't prescribe this to you, but cannabis. I've had so many trials and, seen positive effects with Vietnam veterans that I've worked with. And honestly, it's something that I think you should try. And, at that time, I was super athlete dude, didn't never tried cannabis, was always kind of like looking at cannabis at that time as like, oh, like it's dirty, or only like people who aren't successful aren't doing, some of those stigmas that come with it,
Absolutely.
And but man, as soon as I really started going down the road, it really helped me. I mean, it really helped me in so many times that, I switched completely. I really stopped drinking. I moved over to cannabis, and even when I go out, I have a vape pen, and I go that route, because alcohol for me, and it never brought me to a good place. Obviously, when we're partying, we're having a good time, that's one thing, but when I'm home alone and I'm hungover and I'm in my own head, it wasn't serving me well. And the cannabis for me, and then even going farther and looking into more plant medicines, it's really just opened up my head and opened up my eyes to those things. And I think that's starting to happen in the culture in general in cannabis, and I love seeing it. I love the education, and I love that we're getting past just getting high. Because
mental health is a real thing.
I mean, isn't it crazy though, especially in the veteran community, and I think people just in general self-medicating with alcohol, which is a depressant. So you're like, I'm depressed, I'm going to drink alcohol, and it's going to make me more depressed.
That's exactly what it does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bananas.
Well, it's largely accepted. It's legal everywhere.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not legal in every state.
Just like
Or
prescription
go to
medications,
your dispensary and get what you need. And when we're talking about that education process and breaking down that narrative that we all started having in high school when it was illegal in those commercials. Here's your brain on drugs.
Yeah.
And that's where all that stems from. And those were the dregs. Those were the the stoners were the dudes out in the woods skipping class and not doing the right thing. And I think we're all trying to overcome that. Our training is our worst enemy. I've heard your story hundreds of times. We're trained to soldier on, not to show vulnerability, not to ask for help, to accomplish the mission. And sometimes our training is our worst enemy. And it has to be okay to ask for help, to say, hey man, I'm struggling and I need help. And in services, that's not okay. Right. And that has to change. We can't have these guys looking down the wrong end of their pistols anymore. It's just, it's never going to be zero. That's not realistic. But 22 a day is ridiculous, and we have to do our part.
Right now?
It's an epidemic,
and I think that's a light number, honestly.
Yeah, it's an epidemic.
I
It
just testified in the California legislature on some other matters, but we were talking specifically about veteran suicide. The rate has not gone down. There was like 1 year in the last 4 years where it dipped down. It's gone back up since. I think, if the number's correct, from the VA, the last study I saw in 2020, 125,000 veterans, give or take, since 2001, since the global war on terror started, have committed suicide.
Yeah, we thought the word front line meant being on the battlefield, but the front line is just as strong right here when these soldiers come back and they're trying to assimilate back into civilian life. And we speak a different language. We've seen and done things that most of the population could never imagine. So that's what we're dealing with. And so adrenaline seeking, self-medicating, the VAs are going to slap an opioid or an antidepressant on that. We all know the side effects of that. And then you come up with these stats. And
one
that's
of the
what
side
we're
effects
fighting.
is one of the side effects of some of these SSRIs that they're prescribing. Maybe you got prescribed. I refused to take any of them because I had buddies that took them. They got worse. But one of the side effects is suicide.
Yeah.
And what is it?
SSRIs are typically
Serotonin
like the mood
receptor
stabilizers.
inhibitor.
Yeah.
It's a receptor in your brain, and that's what those pills shut off, basically. Which would then that
Happiness,
screaming voice, that
everything,
crazy roommate that we all have,
J-Rock
that crazy
talking
roommate
about
really
feeling-
goes nuts.
J-Rock feeling dead inside. I'm sure you were on SSRIs.
Yeah. Yeah, because it kills your happiness, and so that's not the answer, and so, cannabis has definitely been, stepping in, and I think there's been a lot of positive results, and we're seeing those now. And obviously, Randy, with the XC GI Foundation, Randy's been, forging ahead for a long time, helping our community, right? And Randy, if you could tell us a little bit more about the XC GI Foundation.
XCGIF.org, Extreme Couture GI Foundation. In 06, I went to Iraq. Maybe some don't know, but I served in the United States Army from 1982 to 1988. I always jokingly say I'm a Cold War veteran. There wasn't anything going on back then. And obviously since 9/11 and the war on terror, so many men and women have put themselves in harm's way. Take the same oath I took did the same training I did and never had to put my butt on the line. All those men and women have. In 06, I got to go to Iraq for 12 days, went to 5 different FOBs in the combat field, and amazing trip for me as a former soldier.
Was that a USO? Was that a USO trip? Or?
Unfortunately, USO and MWR wouldn't touch us back then as mixed martial artists. Wow. We were still considered a fringe sport. And they wouldn't embrace us as doing a morale visit. I went through my old unit, the 101st Airborne, and they brought me and Rich Franklin over.
Wow,
amazing.
Flew us into Kuwait, brought us into Baghdad. We went to 5 different FOBs in that 12 days. A couple of the FOBs had mats. We'd roll out the mats and grappled with the guys. It was a really, really good trip. And they appreciated that we were there, and it was cool.
I had some USO experiences when I was there. I got to see Kid Rock came and did a concert, and I guess I'm going to tell this Kid Rock story now just because it just popped into my head. So
you open up the box, buddy.
You know, I get a chance. We have some USO. And at that time, we did have a couple fighters, like Tito came out. There was a few other people, but Kid Rock was the big concert, right? So I got a chance to meet Kid Rock, helped be like one of his liaisons. And so fast forward years later, I'm in Vegas. I'm bartending at the Playboy Club, and Kid Rock's there. And it just so happened that one of the other guys that I was working with was a former Marine, also a good buddy of mine, and I brought in my picture album and was just going through the pictures, and here comes Kid Rock, and I was showing him this picture, and here he is. So, and Kid Rock ends up coming over. We sit down and we talk. We have a bunch of beers and end up just, drinking Jack all night, just telling stories and just a crazy night. But it was just a funny thing that happened through the USO. I think it's so nice when the feeling of you feel like you're back home for a little bit when those things happen, right? Like, no matter what it is, you you need that moment of like escaping that reality and then get right back to it. I feel like, and
I think that shared experience is one of the things that bonds our community. And I know that's for me. When I got out in 2008, I moved home to where I grew up. I bought the house I grew up in from my grandma in Whittier, California. And I had 0 friends that were veterans, like none. And I felt so alone, even though I was around people all the time. And, unfortunately, I was with a bunch of great people, but we were just partying all the time, self-medicating all the time. I longed for some person in my life that I could talk to about this stuff that we're talking about now. And I was in the Army from 2000 to 2008, deployed to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, June to December 2002, and then to Iraq from April 2003 to April 2004. Came back after the invasion, went to an Army school, got divorced in the middle of that from my high school sweetheart. Go back. I was actually over there in 2006, 2007 in the Kurdish area in Sulaymaniyah. Pretty permissive. The invasion was a mess. We worked in the Marine Corps. You're in the Marine Corps, right? Yep. But yeah, man, I just, while I was in Iraq for the invasion, I ran into a guy in the Marine Corps I went to high school with. Still in touch with that guy. I ran into a guy that I went to college with over there. But I come home and I have nobody. Like my community was so small. Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I struggled. Man.
Yeah, I always wondered, when you guys serve time and when you do time overseas, do you guys stay in communication with a lot of the guys that, you were around? Or is it where everyone kind of just goes off and goes home? Some people stay. Like, how's the
I think for me, it's a little bit of both.
And I don't know that. Yeah. My experience, too, a little of both.
Yeah.
Some guys I served with in Germany and lost contact with and never seen again, or connected with many years later on Facebook, one of the upsides to social media.
That's literally one of the upsides, right?
There were a bunch of guys I sweat and bled with on that wrestling mat, wrestling for the Army, that I'm on a group thread with and hear from those guys every single day. And that's actually one of the few things I missed about fighting. That was the impetus for all the guys to come to Vegas or come to Boston or to watch the fight. And I would get to see those guys and check in with those guys. And now, since I've retired, that doesn't happen anymore. So that's one of the only things I miss about that.
Because the only reason why I brought it up is because you say, you didn't have anyone you could talk to a lot. And I always wondered, did you guys connect, even if talking on the phone or some kind of still find a way to connect?
I think for a while, for me at least, I had a hard time talking about the stuff that we went through. And to Randy's point, when I went over, after I came back in 2004, like you just dealt with it. You know, we're all dealing with a lot of trauma, but you just kind of shut your mouth and you soldiered on. You know, you drive on.
First of all, you don't believe anybody in the civilian world is going to understand
Yeah.
what you're talking about. They haven't seen it. They didn't do that training. They didn't take that same oath. We speak a very particular language. And that's where MVP, Merging Vets and Players, comes in. And we're in 9 cities now. The second chapter in MVP was here in Vegas at my gym. Open to any vet or player that retired, because it's the same transition.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm wondering.
Brought full of
100%.
challenges and self-medication and adrenaline seeking. Can't imagine walking out that tunnel any more alive than you are walking out of that tunnel, and then trying to replicate that somewhere else in your life is just impossible.
Yeah, you're 100% right, which is why I asked that question, and I don't try to compare as far as like, you know, it's
camaraderie though, right? It's camaraderie. You
Any
guys are
any vet or retired player in any sport could come to my gym every Friday and meet with all the MVP guys. We got 50 guys that show up there to
really
work out.
cool.
We spend a half hour training, sweating, getting yourself back in shape, and then a half hour, 45 minutes, what we call a huddle, sitting on the mat, talking about whatever's going on in your life. Could be good, could be bad. And I guarantee if you're struggling with something, somebody in the circle's been there. And that peer-on-peer counseling is way more powerful than some psychiatrist or psychologist trying to tell you you're broken.
You're 100% right.
And the training aspect. And you know, I've been able to go to a few of these MVP classes, and they're fantastic. And actually, we were talking about, you know, doing something with MVP and Jardín, you know, because their classes are every week. You know, we've talked about, you know, there's a monthly thing, and what is it, the California thing that we were talking about?
Yeah, California has a compassionate giving, or like SB 34. They actually passed language. There's actually a group of veterans led by a guy named Sean Kieran and Weed for Warriors. They have a program. They got a bunch of vets together. They got legislators to say, listen, there's no mechanism for us to give plant medicine and cannabis specifically to veterans or people in need, whatever the reason is. And it just so happened he was using veterans because that's his community. So there's a mechanism to give cannabis or give medicine to veterans in California. And I don't know, you know, and that's on me, but I don't know of any other state that has that program. I think some other states might make it easier. I know some states have workarounds like we talked about. But that kind of program is important because there's a lot of veterans or people that need the medicine, regardless of their veterans or not. They just need access to it, and they need access to it at an affordable price, especially with the way things are going in the economy right now. That's important.
Yeah. It's really important. You know, and one of the things, you know, with Jardín's anniversary coming up and Veterans Day, you know, they are doing a full program, the 10th and the 11th. You know, so if there's any vets out there, you know, get down here to Jardín because there's some really great specials running. We're also, you know, I want to talk about Operation Knockout as well. You know, Randy has this fight that is going to be taking place on Veterans Day, where all proceeds go back to the veterans. We've all collectively, Jardín, WeedMaps, Stizzy, we've all kind of jumped in to, you know, kind of help the mission, if you will. Randy, you know, tell us more about Operation Knockout.
So this is our 12th year doing Operation Knockout. We paired up with Toughen Up. Toughen Up is one of the premier amateur MMA organizations in any state, but they operate here in Las Vegas. Jeff Myers, it was his organization. Vinny with one of the life insurance companies helps us do a bunch of the marketing and get sponsors and stuff like that. A bunch of our athletes from Extreme Couture and a bunch of the other gyms in this region and in the neighboring states lend their time and their talent to come put on a fight show, and all the proceeds and all the money from the silent auction and everything that we got going on Saturday goes to the foundation, Extreme Couture GI Foundation. We're providing 3 things that we do. First and foremost, I go out to the hospital every year, and the staff there helps me identify families that are struggling financially while they're in transition, while they're going through surgeries, learning to walk, getting fit for prosthetics, all that stuff. Sometimes up to a 2-year process for some of those guys that have been wounded. So we go out to the hospital, and I sit down and hand each one of those families a $10,000 check. Last year I got to give out 12 of those checks.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Goal is to just get as many, again, any excess money we've made that year goes into the hands of a soldier and his family. We recognize through MVP and the database as it grown for veterans in our communities, and we're in 9 cities now with MVP. So that database is getting bigger all the time. Some of the wounds aren't as visible as amputations and stuff like that. A lot of guys are struggling with post-traumatic stress, TBI, a lot of those things that need a little more professional help or medicinal help. So creating ayahuasca weekends, getting shaman to walk them through creating new neural pathways and letting out some of these demons and some of this crap that they're struggling with has been very, very important. Many of these guys are buried in bills. Yeah. Now, I don't want to enable anybody, so I'm not just going to hand you cash, but through the portal on the Extreme Couture GI website, you can go in there, fill out the paperwork, provide me a copy of that bill that you're struggling with and that's on your back. We'll pay that bill off and get it off your back. So that, and then we're buying 10 block sessions with a professional counselor for guys that need extra tools in the tool belt to deal with some of the stuff they're struggling with.
It's
so those
amazing.
are the ways that we find ways to give back to our community and our veterans through Extreme Couture GI Foundation and merging vets and players.
That's actually amazing.
I want to touch on one thing real quick regarding counseling. Just, you know, my own personal journey this last year. I said, you know, I need a little help. And so I said, I'm going to go to the VA and try to get into a therapy program. So to your point where you're helping them find therapists and funding it, it took me, you know, I can pay for the therapist myself, but I was like, hey, I have access to this program. I want to try it. I haven't had much of a VA experience since I got out because I just didn't want anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. It took me 6 months to get a therapist. Yeah. Wow. 6 months. And I told the
everything
scheduler,
takes a long time.
And I said, what if I was in crisis? She's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm so sorry. You have to go to the ER. So, you know, kudos to you for putting that program on. And that's, guys like you, Randy, supporting the community. The veteran community specifically has had to be really self-reliant. Yeah. And we're fortunate to have guys like you. And I appreciate, you know, you giving WeedMaps and us an opportunity to play a small part in what you're doing.
Well, it's a lot of great work. Support, because it's about these conversations that need to be had. It can't be that elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. We need to have these conversations if we have any hope of turning the percentages around and getting a bunch of our brothers and sisters out of homeless status, back up and operating at a high level. We expect them to operate at a high level because we know the kind of people that they are. They took that oath and they were willing to put their life on the line. That's right. So,
yeah, it's crazy to see, you know, I mean, not to get into political, you know, but as we're seeing, you know, war and these things ramping up, I can only help but think, like, I don't want to see more of this. Like, how do we, like, we haven't figured this out, and we're going to send some more of our kids out, and they're going to come home and have these same problems, you know, like, we have to get this figured out, like, and it needs to be addressed. It's an epidemic, in my opinion.
100% an epidemic.
And it's just not being addressed enough. And to your point, these conversations help. Understanding, education, that helps, because, you know, a lot of guys just don't know what to do. They just don't know what to do. And so all these conversations, plant medicine, the XC organization and what you guys do, these are making steps forward, you know, in this community, and we're happy to be a part of it.
Well, we have to change that narrative. It's not about getting high and detaching from reality.
Right.
It's about embracing reality, embracing the demons and the things that you've seen and done, and creating new neural pathways and new tools to be able to deal with that stuff and put the proper frame around it so that you can live with yourself and you can be a contributing member and support your family and do all the things that are important to us. So, I mean, you don't want to dig into those political holes, but it's all
we'll
about
fall
the money.
in those things.
No, but please let us know whatever we can do on our side too, because once again, man, like, we understand the importance of taking care of those that have taken care of us, you know. And so, I mean, Jardín will do our part as far as educating the customer, partner up with some vendors to see if we can, you know, figure out a way to put product in these guys' hands.
It's honestly been way harder to get in touch with and get our athletes that have retired that struggle to open up.
Yeah,
because there's this bravado. Oh yeah, I was in the NFL or I was in the Major League Baseball or whatever. There's an ego and a bravado involved there that you can't wade through and get through. It's been much easier to reach out to our vets. They don't have that. They're willing to say, yeah, man, I'm struggling, and this sucks, and it's been much harder to get through.
You're 100% right, because a lot of the athletes too are going through like CTE, which is a serious
issue.
Is a huge issue, man. And
TBIs and
it's major, and a lot of football players specifically don't talk about it a lot. I mean, I got a lot of guys because I'm part of the NFL Players Association as well. So I talk to players a lot, and they'll hit me up on the side, say, hey, can you, I'm like, yeah, I'll send packages to them. I shouldn't have said that, but I'll take care of them. I'll send CBDs. I'll send CBD packages to them. But I'll get them some stuff when need be. Just because, look, man. I mean, like you said, guys, it's the bravado. They don't want to talk about the issues they have, but mental health is real, and that's why I was curious about the setup that you have, where guys can kind of like work out, talk with each other, because we're all going through the same thing. Whether you're a vet, athlete, it's the same kind of concept. Where once you're done doing that, it's like there's only a select few people you can talk to that have been in that same world.
Yeah, exactly right.
And talking to a therapist is, like you said, I'm not knocking that space, but that's a joke. Like you got to talk to people that have been there, done that, because they can actually have those same kind of conversations with you and understand what you're going through. So anything we could do to kind of help, I definitely love to talk to you more so about that on the side outside of here, because I deal with a lot of athletes, a lot. Football players, baseball. I got a baseball player coming to town tomorrow for the Yankees, and literally he's like, right when I land, I'm coming to you. Like, no joke. Like 7 o'clock.
Is that why you're all dressed up today?
No, I'm a Yankee guy, but nonetheless, like,
anytime any of those guys are here on Fridays, 5:30 at Extreme Couture MMA, the gym is our MVP, and they're all welcome to come in and sign the release and do the workout and sit in the huddle with us. And and then because of COVID, we had to pivot. Last thing we need to do is isolate our guys, and they wanted everybody locked down. All the gyms were closed, so we started doing Zoom calls, and we have hybrid meetings now. Not everybody can make it to the gym. You can do the workout in your living room, Zoom in with us, and sit through the huddle and let those demons out in that capacity as well, through the hybrid meetings as well. So one way or the other, we can get get connected with folks that speak the same language or dealing with the same stuff, transitioning and trying to make their way through that.
Yeah, because a lot of people think it's about the money. It's not even about the money. Like, it's not even about how much money they have. It's just the mentality of, you're no longer doing this. Used to be doing one thing and like all eyes were on you, and like the mentality around that was just like, and then all of a sudden it just stops, and now you're in the real world. Yeah. And like, how do I adjust to the real world?
Next to Tony Gonzalez in one of the huddles in the Vegas chapter of MVP. And here's, arguably one of the best guys in the sport. It's like, man, 2 years ago I was Superman. Now who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
I mean, if that doesn't strike you right in the heart.
Oh yeah.
A lot of fighters, I would think. A lot of fighters, I would think.
Fighters, me, Chuck, Hoyce, we're all part of MVP. Yeah. I mean, I've shared in that circle plenty of times. So.
I think that's, we touched on it briefly, but just that sense of community and connectedness, you have to, and for anybody watching this, you have to stay connected to your family, to your friends, to your teammates, to the guys from your unit. Like, you have to stay connected. And that's a two-way street, right? So, I lost one guy, committed suicide, hadn't even left Iraq yet when we left, committed suicide. I lost a company commander buddy of mine a month later. And the list goes on. And I'm pretty fortunate. I haven't lost that many friends to suicide, but a lot of guys have. But it's incumbent upon us to reach out to our teammates. It's incumbent upon us to also reach out to our battle buddies, as we call it in the Army. We got to reach out, especially Veterans Day is coming up. But for us, every day is Veterans Day, so we should be reaching out on the regular.
And these holidays, a lot of times, are a real struggle. Survivor's guilt's real. Your buddy died or your buddy offed himself, and you're thinking, why him? Why not me? Yeah. And that survivor's guilt is real. We have to step up. We have to have these conversations. We have to be willing to address it. And like I said, our training is a lot of times our worst enemy. There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Yeah. Well, you're doing it. You're making progress, and that's what it's all about. And there just needs to be more views and more of us out there. Really, just it can be tough to find another Randy.
And I
will
say,
more of us that link arms, the fewer of our men and our brothers and sisters fall through the cracks.
It's our time to link arms and really come together. And as I said, like,
there's the other downside to the social media platforms. You see your battle buddies on there, and they seem like they're doing great, and then the next thing you know, they've offed themselves.
Right.
And the ripple effect of that. But man, I thought Bob was doing great. He was struggling. Man, maybe I'm not doing so good. And now you start feeling crappy because you didn't reach out to him. You couldn't help him. He did what he did.
I think there's something to that, Randy. I think that guilt that comes with, I didn't do enough, whether it was in the service, or why not me, or hey, I should have reached out to my buddy. I feel like it does cause a trickle down effect, like you're talking about.
And it's you're going to take every single thing that you're struggling with, you're going to multiply it by 10 and hand it off to every single person you love. Is that the kind of guy you want to be? No. That's what you do when you take your own life. That's what suicide does. Yeah. I've been in this situation. It sucks. Yeah. It sucks for all those people. It's a permanent solution to temporary problems. And we need to address and talk about the temporary problems and give other people other options.
It's sad to see it too, because there are other options, there are other paths, and obviously when, it gets to that point, and I know I was in that for a while, and it wasn't that I wanted to kill myself, because I always felt like that, for me, I felt like that wasn't honorable, but I wanted to die, and I rode my motorcycle at 200 miles an hour, and I did those things instead, I would push it to the limit. There was times I was, I'm doing tricks, I'm doing just stupid stuff that I'm, because I wasn't caring, and I think as men too, we've, at least from our generation, we've developed this tough guy thing where we have to be tough for everyone else, and it takes another tough guy sometimes to be able to break down to and be like, wow, we're the same. Like, we're both feeling these things. I'm not alone in this. I'm not some, I'm not like an outlier. Yeah.
There it is. None of us are alone.
Right.
We just have to recognize that, because we have a tendency to isolate ourselves, stuff everything down, and it just festers and gets worse.
Poison pill.
Let that stuff out. Stuff hates the light of day, especially when I'm sitting with my brother who gets it, who felt those same feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anxiety and stress, anxiety, depression, man. That's where it all really derives from when you really think about it.
It is, and it just boils and festers in you, And so, doing different events, like the motorcycle, the poker run. What a fantastic event that is. You want to talk a little bit about that, because we're gearing up for that next year.
Yeah. I mean, that's been one of, obviously there's an affinity between soldiers and motorcycle clubs. I mean, that's where they originated from after World War II. A lot of us are bike riders. That was one of our very first events. We've been doing that for 15 years here since we founded the foundation in 2007. We're doing it in 4 different cities now. Vegas was the very first. We just had our 15th year doing the charity ride. I got my 2nd year doing it in Florida coming up on the 18th. So
awesome.
Next week I'll leave on Wednesday for the Space Coast ride in Cocoa Beach, Florida. They're a lot of fun. And again, I think dealing with mental health and that support system, it's about finding your team. You had your squad, your unit, those were your brothers, that was your team. Jay Glazer wrote a book on Unbreakable, and it's about mental health, and he had the cojones to step up as a public person and talk about his struggles with anxiety and depression and all that, and now I'm doing a podcast about that. But for him, it's about and I'm part of his team that deals with that. I never understood that. I never struggled with anxiety and depression, so it was hard for me to tactically grasp what he's struggling with. And that book really gave me some tools and an understanding. But each and every one of us has to find that team, that group of guys that when we need to, we can lean on. We can say, hey, man, I'm pretty screwed up this weekend. This is what happened. This is where my mind went. And, a bunch of shit that I went through came flying back up. I thought I dealt with this stuff. And having that team you can rely on is a huge tool and a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You've never had anxiety?
I've never struggled with that. I have a sister that struggles with it. I have trouble grasping, people that do struggle with that. And so having some context to relate to them and have empathy and understanding for what they're going through and what that feels like it's hard for the average person that's never struggled with it.
Yeah.
It is really hard to explain too for someone that's never had to deal with it.
And I've been through a couple divorces. Those first 2 divorces, I was in a pretty bad headspace for a little while, but that just the dust settles and you keep plodding forward and you come out of those situations. And it was not something in my life that I just ever really struggled with.
Okay, wow.
Well, these events that we have that bring the veterans together, like we've been saying, I think it's finding your team of people, finding people who are like-minded and understanding, right? The MVP events, I think, are a fantastic way for people to get involved. 5:30 Fridays at Extreme Coutures, which, by the way, Extreme Coutures he's being humble over here, but probably the best MMA gym in the world. I know it's up for another award this year, I believe. And so you get to train around some of the top UFC guys in the game, up-and-comers. Dennis and Eric over there, fantastic, and they do a great job over there. So if you're just interested
you
in
work out
training,
over
because
there,
I
right?
feel like that
Sarah?
was a thing. Yeah,
You work out there, right?
yeah. I've been working out there for a long time. I've been in martial arts a long time, and that for me has always been part of my therapy. Riding motorcycles is one of the things as part of my therapy.
Me too.
These are the things that I have to have in my life to function. The minute you pull the gym away from me, the minute you pull some of these things away from me, I this is where my anxiety starts to happen. So I have to put myself into these things, and martial arts for me is something that I love it. I'll do it till I can't move anymore. Like that's just how I feel about it. I love it, and I think that for guys who are having some of these issues, like diving into something, whether that be riding your motorcycle, whether that be your work or something that you're passionate about, we need things to fill time. The idle hands.
We need healthy things to fill time.
We need healthy things to fill up our time.
I think a lot of us.
Vegas it.
I know the two of us in our history are a lot of us have opted for not healthy things.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Which has led us to this conversation today.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Because like you go down the road of getting smashed with the buddies so many times, but that's just covering up some stuff up. But real conversation, real work. It takes real work to get through this, and that was for me, like, I have to work at this just like I work at anything else, like I can't just go to this guy and I don't feel good. So I'll just, I don't know what to do anymore. Like I put myself on a regimen of reading, I'm really like, I've become this biohacker because I'm what we put in our body is really important, and all these things, the outside noise of the world that we're all dealing with, right? So besides the stress of things that they're dealing with, this outside world stuff, I mean, we were talking about it, right? There's so much stresses and things happening that we're all dealing with on top of, just regular life, So I think mental health in general in this country is a problem, and there needs to be some kind of way to figure out better therapy. I think going into these ayahuascas, going into the plant medicine is really starting to open up some of those lanes also for people that never really understood what to do.
Yeah, and I don't want to be biased because, of course, we're in the cannabis space, but, cannabis really does make a big difference. Like we were saying earlier, it's more holistic, but the terpene profiles and certain things like that really makes a big difference when it comes to, putting the product in your body, because a lot of people just consume to consume, but they don't really understand what they're, actually consuming. So
it's a great point.
And we do our part of really trying to talk to every single person that walks through the door to the retail footprint, and we try to explain to them exactly what they're putting in their body so that we're pairing the right product with them. And, when you're dealing with all these different kind of issues, like you're saying, because everyone always has something wrong with them. I don't care who you are, whether it's anxiety, stress, hard time sleeping, pain, diabetes, asthma, whatever it may be, certain terpenes help you with those ailments. And so we try to do our part here at Jardín as far as like teaching the consumer that it's not just indica sativa, it's not the highest THC percentage per se. It's about what's the right product for you, for your specific ailment you may have.
And that's what people need to know, and they just don't understand. They just think weed,
they
get high. So honestly, you taught me a lot. You taught me a lot very first time. We've been friends a long time. But the first time I came in here and I started doing the education and understanding it, it was so interesting to me, right? Even when I started working with WeedMaps, I didn't know about these things. And so as I start learning and learning more, it's just opened up my head a lot. Jardín University, which you guys have here, I think is a fantastic thing. And it's an educational class on cannabis and different terpenes that do help and how they help, right? So it's important to have those. And I think, as we've been talking, maybe this, some veterans would really benefit from coming and getting some of that education, making sure that they're getting the products that are going to help them specifically, so they don't go through, you know, there's some of the things we've all gone through. We've tried the 100-milligram gummy, or we did these things, right? So cutting through some of that to get them the actual stuff that they need.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like, we want to do our part to help as much as possible. And that's part of it through Jardín University and just the education around the product side of things. So that, you know, because the last thing you want is someone to come in that's like major anxiety, heavy stress, PTSD, like next level, and they go to the wrong dispensary and they just get the highest THC, and it just makes them 10 times worse.
And they're nervous,
you know,
like you said, walking in sometimes.
They're already nervous, so
they're already like, well, I don't know.
They're already,
and they're just like, sure.
In. Yeah, you're 100%
Whatever,
right. So
you know, like,
we want to make sure they're pairing with the right product, and we're taking our time with them. And through the classes, which we've talked about before, we really want to open that up so that they understand, like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, just like you didn't know that. And once again, like, you're not the only one. You know, I've dealt with so many different people we have on a whole here, from all walks of life, whether they're corporate America to that 21-year-old on the corner. They don't know what they're putting in their body, but they want to consume the product. So, you know, we try to really push the envelope on the educational side of this space, and we're really trying to push the envelope with the vendors as well, so that the guys that are creating the products,
marketing it that way, telling the story, right?
They're telling the story behind the product instead of just trying to, you know, make a quick buck,
right?
Because that's just not the name of the game here, because this is medicine at the end of the day. This was medicine before medicine. Like, this is traditional medicine. So
from the earth.
Exactly.
From the earth, you know. And one of the things WeedMaps, you know, started taking advantage of was that educational as well. You know, so there is an educational part to the platform. You know, Jay, I don't know if you want to talk more about the education side, but I think the education is, you know, like what you guys have done is fantastic, and I see that's part of the trend, because people are looking at it as medicine, because it is. I mean, remember, it started out as medical.
Yeah,
no, for sure.
Yeah, we have on WeedMaps, and I'd encourage you guys to do, I'm sure you're doing some form of it, but at WeedMaps, we launched WeedMaps Learn a few years ago. Actually, our current head of revenue, Jackie Becerra, and her husband, Nick, started it a few years back. And then our content team has expanded upon it, but it's just evergreen content, gets updated every once in a while. I know, like, the content team's working on some stuff that's highlighting some veteran collabs right now, but there's a lot of stuff about terpenes, a lot of stuff about the different, like, delivery methods. But, you know, the content you guys are producing, I hope you guys are capturing it on video and putting it on YouTube and chopping it up on Instagram, and then just letting it live somewhere so people can search for it. I know it's been really valuable to our audience online. You know, it's self-serve, and it leads to a lot of conversations, which are hugely important. A lot of it is people just don't know what they don't know sometimes, and it's great that, like, they can come into your shop, you know, and other shops that take things as serious as you do, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is probably a good time. I wanted to kind of figure out how everybody got connected to cannabis. I'll quickly share my story. I got out of the Army in 2008. I did go to a party. I smoked flower, and it was way different than any flower I'd ever smoked. And mind you, I was in ROTC in college, and then 8 years in the Army, so it had been years since I'd even touched cannabis. But it was like way stronger, way more potent. And then I got reconnected to my college buddy, Doug Francis, who's the current CEO and the co-founder of WeedMaps. He's in the cannabis space, and he said, come help me. I said, I don't even understand, like, how we make money short of selling weed illegally. He's like, no, I have a medical management company, and we're fortunate our medical director, Dr. Bonnie Goldstein, who still works with us to this day, gave us a ton of education on cannabis. And I said, hey, I'm a veteran. I can't sleep. You know, I'm just like high tension all the time. And so she educated me on a lot of it. And really, for me, I'm not a recreational consumer. I really only ever, you know, I don't mind smoking once in a while or eating an edible here and there, but I really do it to help me get better sleep. Unfortunately, now, 15 years removed from the Army, my sleep isn't, I have a hard time getting to sleep, but once I sleep, I'm good. But for me, definitely getting out, it was like the only way I could get to sleep. I'd be up all night.
I still have a hard time, and I still use it for sleep.
Yeah.
You know.
How did you get introduced to it after you got out of the Marine Corps?
Well, for me, it was honestly, you know, not being able to take the prescription drugs I was receiving and starting that way, you know. And again, I've seen it for years, and people using it in the party aspect, and same thing with mushrooms, right? You know, it's like everybody's taking it in the party aspect, but when you actually go with an intention of healing or looking inside, it opens your brain in such a way that it's, I don't know how else you can get there unless you're good with meditation and you're able to get yourself into that place. But I just found it, you know, those times where the anxiety, you know, where some of those things were really hitting me, it just smoothed it up and brought my spirits up enough and really got me through some of those times. And it's always helped with sleep. I still use it for sleep. You know, it's one of those things. It's, you know, it still helps me now, and it also helps with pain, man. When I'm struggling with, you know, an arm injury or something's going on in my body, right? Slept wrong.
Father time.
It all
baby.
works, right? But it works. It works in so many ways, and I mean, like, I use topicals, right? Zach got me some topicals last time I was here. I use them every time I train, man. They've been feeling good. I switched out my Icy Hot instead. You know, there's so many different products now too that, again, I think it's you know, just getting consumers to understand what it is and getting it in their hands. So,
Zach, how did you get connected to cannabis?
Crazy story. So I'm Jamaican. That's my background. So I grew up in that kind of household, like with Dr. Sebi and just more holistic stuff.
I love Dr. Sebi.
My father's been a weed smoker forever, and but never really pushed it on me. My mother wasn't at all. And growing up playing sports, once again, I didn't really consume cannabis at all playing sports, even through, not at all through high school. In college, I didn't really. Once I got to the NFL, because once again, let me backtrack, I never touched any pills. Like, even if I had a headache, my mother would never give me Advil or anything like that. Drink some water, she'd give me some whatever concoction she'd make in the house, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And so I was always about that. So just since I was a little kid, she was like they pushed it on me, like anti-pills.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not good for
My
me.
mom's Korean. She's the same way.
So just anti-pills. So when I got to college, kind of followed that same process, you know, and never really consumed. It wasn't until I got to the NFL, the pain was a little bit more after practices and games and stuff like that. And I saw a lot of the players were consuming. So I kind of just consumed post-practice, you know, things like that, just for the pain. Yeah. And guys like Ed Reed, who I played against, I didn't play with, but, you know, Ed Reed and, you know, like I was saying earlier, Tom, a lot of these guys were big consumers. So I was smoking just for that. Then I stopped playing, didn't really smoke that much because I'm not a social smoker either. Like, I don't really smoke just to smoke. You know, I've never bought an eighth and just rolled like, I've never done that, as crazy as it sounds. But then, out of nowhere, and I don't know if it was, like, from concussions or anything like that, but just all of a sudden, at a certain age, and this is maybe 5 years after I was done playing football, like, anxiety came out of nowhere. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? I didn't even know what anxiety was. Like, I just knew something was off. And I had to go to the Cleveland Clinic, and I got tested, and they're like, you know, they really can't check for CTE and all that stuff until you're, you know, unfortunately, until you're dead.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they can't test till you're actually gone. So, which sucks, man. But nonetheless, I had to go through all these tests, and they were trying to give me Xanax, and dude, literally, it was the worst. I never touched the Xanax. I didn't take it, but it was the worst feeling known to man. That anxiety, like, it was so bad I couldn't get into a car. Like,
it's
if
hard
I knew
to get
I
anything
didn't drive,
done.
you can't get anything done.
You can't get anything done.
Like,
it's like too
and
much
it came
going on.
out of nowhere. Like, once again, I played in front of, you know, 50,000, 80,000 people, no problem. But literally, it just hit like that. I was at an airport one time, and then I just started sweating like crazy. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, just went into panic mode. And I didn't know what the hell was wrong. And legitimately, that's when I went to Cleveland, like I said, and they tried to prescribe me Xanax. And I was like, I'm not taking it. So then I started doing research on cannabis, and I just started consuming it little by little. But once again, not understanding terpenes yet. I met Adam, fortunately, through my neighbor, and we kind of partnered up on this. Started to understand the industry a little bit more. Started to do a little bit more research, talking to vendors. And then I started opening up to terpenes and understanding the product, so I was consuming with the purpose. So then I started just the right, you know, blend of myrcene and carotene, and now that just killed the anxiety, combining that with CBD, my anxiety went away completely. You know, so, and now I just stay on that regimen to just kind of consume it with a purpose as opposed to consume just to consume.
I like that, consuming with a purpose.
Yeah, smoking with a purpose, man. So, like, you know, because, you know, look, and I understand a lot of people want to smoke socially just to smoke. That's fine. God bless you. You know, because it is better than drinking alcohol. But at the same time, like I said earlier, everyone has something wrong with them, man. And there's a terpene for something for everyone. So, you know, you can consume the product socially, still get that social high, and take care of your body at the same time. So I literally can talk, you know, smoking with a purpose is a thing. And so I kind of started to consume just for that purpose because of medicinal reasons. Like, I was trying to kill anxiety, kill that stress. Like, I couldn't go on an airplane for the longest. Like, wouldn't even go on an airplane.
Right.
Like, it was bad. Like, driving from my house to like a certain distance, I was like, bro, I don't want to drive because I'll be sitting in traffic. Like, I'm trapped in my car. Like, it was weird like that.
Right.
And I don't know where the hell it came from, but I think it was concussions, you know, like there's no question. Because then I started talking to some of my buddies, like you guys were saying earlier, staying in contact. They were going through the same shit.
Things. Interesting.
And it was like right around that same age range, like it just boom, just came out of nowhere. So we all know it has everything to do with football. Like the concussions getting beat up for however many years. So, you know, and I kind of try to put my boys on it too. I'm like, listen, guys, you guys start consuming cannabis. Don't touch these pills. So a lot of them consume as well. So we all kind of did it for medicinal purposes at the end of the day, and that's kind of like my story behind it.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about cannabis, though, is it is a medicine, but if you want to just go to a concert and enjoy that a little bit more, because that's me, right?
Yeah.
Like I am definitely a consumer for recreational. You know, like I can't even, like if I'm going to see a rock concert, I want to have a joint. It's just part of like that's part of my like enjoying that experience fully. And then I'm also using it for therapies, right? So there's there's so much that can be done there. So,
Randy, what about you?
I tried it a few times in high school, you know, like most of us, just for friends. You know, hey man, let's party, and got high a couple times, and it was a fun experience, but it wasn't a regular part of my life. It wasn't going to get me to the goals and the things that I had aspired to do, and then of course the military, college. Wrestling for the national team, tested on a regular basis, and the last thing you want to do is pop positive on a test. You know?
UFC
Tough to
also
keep a
tested?
nickname like the Natural and start pop positive, and they considered it
Great
performance-enhancing
call.
drug. So,
great
you
call.
know,
Did they test in the UFC early on?
Yeah,
also?
they did.
Oh, they did.
Wow.
They started testing for PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs, in 2000 in MMA.
Was cannabis considered a PED?
And
Well,
cannabis was
was
on the
it,
list. It's a performance-enhancing.
Nick
Diaz
Diaz.
brothers.
Yeah, Diaz brothers.
They use it for their ADHD, and it's medicinal for them. But and they both of them have popped positive on several occasions for THC. Which I thought, why is this a performance-enhancing drug? It
I
didn't
always
make
thought that
any
was
sense
crazy.
to me, but-
NFL too. I'm like, these guys are getting their bodies beat up. Like,
But it was born with asthma, so smoke and me don't get along at all.
Got it.
So smoking is just not something I really want to do. I certainly, as a high school kid, didn't care and did it, but I don't really want to put smoke in my lungs with the asthma anyway. So found my way into the edibles, and again, for me, it was about sleeping. Wasn't sleeping for crap, you know, neck, you know, discs in the neck from C4, C5 all the way down to T1 are just worn out from years and years of fighting and wrestling. So there was some nerve and aches and pains and issues there, but the biggest thing was not getting sleep. I would wake up at 3 a.m. every night. Just like, and the more frustrated you'd get about it, the longer you're going to be awake. You're not allowed to, you can't just relax yourself and go back to sleep. So started playing around with edibles to help myself sleep. Tried the sativa, the cottonmouth was almost unbearable. You know, tried the indica, you know, ate everything in the damn fridge, and it was like, so then I started playing around with some of the hybrids that kind of split the difference between those two, using the CBD and the CBD for the neck, for, you know, the lotions and all that stuff, and then found the CBN, which I had never heard of. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And now coupling a hybrid with a CBN, you know, different inhibitor and different receptors for the two different types, and that makes the overall experience. I just melt into the bed now, and it's amazing. It's great.
You know, it's crazy to me, all the things, like, we all have to experiment. If, like, the government made it a little easier to conduct research, like, my goodness, like, there could be research that says, hey, Randy, just do this. You know?
You got to remember, man, Big Pharma, we don't have the lobbying power.
That's where we start going down the political rabbit holes again, bro.
About the money and who's really running stuff.
We don't have the lobbying power, which is why they're not helping us out, man, because we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But nonetheless, like,
not only did they stop studying these things in 1958, they destroyed all the results to the tests they did.
Yeah, if you guys, I don't know, is anybody familiar
why?
Dr.
Why would
Sue
you do
Sisley?
that?
Dr. Sue Sisley was a University of Arizona researcher researching cannabis, got fired for the work she was doing, and then she ran the first clinical trial for PTSD in veterans. Man, I think it was back in 2016 around there. I could have the year wrong, but it took her 7 years to get that study launched. And I mean, effectively, you know, there was at that time only University of Mississippi was the only place you could get weed for research, which was not at all.
Mississippi?
Yeah, University of Mississippi.
Wow.
Not at all
legal
comparable
in that
to. Everybody watching this should look this up because it's not even comparable to what you sell in your store or is available now in 25 states. But it took her 7 years to get the research done, and then they just kept sending her moldy weed and weed that was the wrong strain and type. And it's so frustrating that she just said, I don't want to even do this research anymore because it's not doing anybody a service, But it's unfortunate because she was doing research that really could have led to, or could have affirmed that maybe it wasn't good for PTSD, but it's just so hard to get research done with cannabis specifically.
You gotta remember, man. You gotta remember, Big Pharma, they do not want this legalized.
No,
they
but it's
know
crazy.
It's a direct
MDMA,
shot.
psilocybin, all breakthrough therapy
Yeah.
drugs, but cannabis, ayahuasca,
Ayahuasca.
It's
Peyote,
still
all of
on.
them.
It's still on there
All the
with heroin.
psychedelics. Changed My Mind is I think it's a 4-part documentary on Netflix, and it's very
Michael
enlightening.
Pollan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Great series.
Very,
Great
very
book.
good.
Yeah,
It's a direct shot to them. I mean, I don't want to get too far, but prime example was a couple months ago. Alcohol and tobacco paid a combined $900,000 in tax revenue. Cannabis paid over $10 million that same month. The same month.
That's crazy.
So they're trying to do everything they can to tarnish the space, because they're trying to make it hard for us in the industry to stay afloat.
Yeah.
Because if we're staying afloat and it's shown, the institutional capital, which was the arena, and they're seeing that this is a real legitimate business and all these people are consuming cannabis and it's drawing all this tax, it's going to directly affect Big Pharma.
Oh, big time.
And we just don't have the lobbying power yet. But we'll see what happens because there's some noise being made right now about legislation changing on a federal level.
Big Pharma is a tough one to compete with.
100%.
Their hands are in all kinds of stuff, but we'll not talk about that right now.
For sure.
But we got to kind of wrap things up a little bit here. But Randy, thank you so much for being here today. Jason, flew in for this. Zach, Jardín, everything that you guys do. Don't miss the sale and Veterans Day, the 10th and 11th this week. You guys want to get down there. We're also going to be giving out some of the Operation Knockout tickets for the fight on Veterans Day. So make sure you get down to Jardín. Thank you, Stizzy, also for being a part of this program with Jardín. One of the brands out there that's helping alongside Jardín for the Veterans Day event. So thank you so much. And Randy, once again, thank you. Get your tickets for Operation Knockout from the Extreme Couture GI Foundation website. And we'll see you guys here.
Hey, before we wrap, can I just add one thing? And Zach, if I could borrow your guys, Ivy, who's sitting over there and helping run things. Thanks, my man. And thank you for hosting us, Zach.
Sure.
But can we post a link to XCGIF for MVP?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
And then can we also post a link to the Veterans Affairs suicide hotline? We can get you all that data, but just at the end of the show, if we could post all those links.
Vetsandplayers.org too.
Okay, vetsandplayers.org. Yeah, let's get all the links up to all these partners that we're trying to support. So
I'll get you all the links.
No, thank you.